Bellator took their show to France for the first time, first event in France history. Bellator Paris, Congo Johnson 2 was the headlining event. MVP was also on the card in action. This fight seemed like it should have drawn more attention. Was it the lack of star power? I don't know. We're going to break it all down here in a second. Please give a thumbs up to the video, subscribe to the channel as we break it down here. I just didn't get the impression that this was really a big deal for the MMA community, Bellator having their first major event or for their first event in Paris. So what did you guys feel about this card, and were you excited at all about it even?
I can't say I was excited about it. Quite honestly, it flew well under my radar, despite the fact that this was an historic moment. And it's a shame that Bellator has squandered yet another opportunity to make a big splash. We're talking about a country that has resisted mixed martial arts for far too long. If I'm not mistaken, it was like the Judo Federation that has a lot of power in the sports world over there. And they were the ones blocking this, and somehow they finally turned around. So this was all able to happen. And this is while you've had a number of prominent French martial artists throughout several different combat disciplines. We've had some French competitors in the UFC and Bellator. So they have squandered an opportunity to make a huge splash in a market that they have at least been trying to cultivate for a while. Like Bellator makes frequent trips to Europe. The problem here too with Bellator in Europe is that typically when they go to Europe, it's so difficult for, the diehard North American fans to watch something that we don't even try anymore. You have to play musical chairs with your remote control if you can watch it at all, live at least, and then you might get a tape delayed version on whatever the broadcast partner is, or DAZN wouldn't have it. It was always some obstacle. So I think we've been conditioned to kind of tune it out, and it's really a shame because there was a lot of potential there that they've squandered in a multitude of ways.
Yeah, they have definitely done that throughout their career. And, throughout their tenure as a promotion, or rather, this, like you said, making history in France, bringing in the biggest name that I guess they could, that is a French-born fighter in Czech Congo to headline against Tim Johnson, isn't necessarily a fight that just gets people excited. Now, Drake, what did you think about this? Obviously, you got to try to have a French fighter in the main event. But what did you think about this matchup to carry a card that was really supposed to be like a historic moment for the sport?
Not ideal. Wasn't ideal. If you can make that happen with the most popular guy from that area, no matter where it is, yeah, of course, let's go for that. If it makes sense. In this case, to really make this a moment, because unfortunately, I don't feel like it was much of one. Like, I wasn't very excited for this. I wasn't excited for it. Let's just be flat out honest about it. I look forward to, some of the prospect fights that Bellator puts on with their European shows, always, of course. But this didn't feel like anything too crazy. And what I would have done to really magnify things was, you could have had Congo and Johnson 2 as like co-main event, right? Put a title on this one to really make it feel special and like something that people have to see, because I got nothing against Czech Congo, and I enjoyed his UFC run a lot, but he just has not been as exciting in Bellator. It is what it is with him lately, and I don't think anyone thought anything would happen with this rematch either, despite Congo actually knocking Johnson out in the first time they met, which was surprising considering that Bellator stint, like I said. And just, I don't know, man. I think that, when they announced that this was going to happen, right? Like going to France, first time ever kind of thing, it still didn't feel like that big of a deal at the time. And I think that is because everywhere else has gotten with the times. Everything kind of was okay with MMA, and France was way behind everybody else. So it's like, all right, well, we already see it everywhere now. You guys are just, come on, just hurry it up. It wasn't like, I don't know. It just, if it would have happened in the early days when things were kind of more off limits, I think it would have had much more of an impact no matter who was on it. But I just think this day and age, all the factors around it that, I don't know, didn't add up with how they put it together. It was kind of bad timing, I think. Also, you got to think about the world we're living in right now. It just, I don't know. It was a missed opportunity. I mean,
Like, you didn't have to do it. Like, you didn't. And if your hopes to make a big splash rest on a Czech Congo main event, you've already messed up. Like, you've already gone down the wrong path. Like Drake, it's a great point about, a title fight at the top of this, or, the plethora of stars that might be available, even if it's, if we want to resurrect a name from yesteryear in a main event, something that just sounds exciting on paper or has some level of intrigue to it. Because although, yes, this is history, that this was opening up the French MMA market, that doesn't necessarily make it a selling point. It just becomes an anecdote in the Guinness Book of World Records or something. It doesn't become anything that mandates that we open our eyes and watch and make this appointment viewing. So quite honestly, I would prefer that either the UFC or KSW be the ones to usher in mixed martial arts for the French market. The UFC, for obvious reasons, they are, without a doubt, the number one promotion in the sport in the world. And KSW, because they define European mixed martial arts. And they've done shows pretty much everywhere but France. And when they put on a show, it is a spectacle. It is something to remember. It's beyond just a fight card. It is a full-on show. And let's celebrate that another market has opened up in our sport. Let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate that the French Sport Federation, I think what they're called, that they decided to finally wake up and realize that we're in the 21st century and mixed martial arts is okay. So that's really a huge missed opportunity in a variety of ways for Bellator and for France.
I think back to Bellator going to New York, beating the UFC to New York, and they brought a pretty good card to that event, and they made it a spectacle. They went above and beyond with the marketing and everything like that to really make that event feel special. If you're trying to do that by getting into a new territory, a new country, the one that hasn't had MMA, you should do the same here. Like Drake was saying, why is there not a title fight on this card? Like, that should be the bare minimum, like, hey, this is a big deal. MMA is a big deal. Bellator is a big deal. We're going into a brand new country. Hey, take Czech Congo and Tim Johnson running it back. Like, there's a disconnect there. Like, where is the special feel to this? And what this tells me as someone just onlooking, you don't have a title fight on this card. You're going into a brand new country in the middle of a pandemic where crowds aren't going to be there the same, especially for your American audience that's looking on, that are locked in the house. Like, people watching, they're like, why would I get excited about an empty arena, non-title fight card in a new location? Like, there's a lot of things missing there in this promotion of this fight. It just doesn't, like, the timing just didn't make sense. Like, for me, I would say, hey, let's wait until all of this coronavirus stuff is over. Let's wait until Americans can travel to all of these countries freely and they're not banned from global travel. Because maybe, hey, Bellator, maybe you do have some fans, or maybe you do have, media even that would want to travel across the overseas to go be at that first event that you would, in the right, promotional sense, put a title fight on at the very least. So there's a lot of things here that just didn't make sense for me, and that's why it was really subdued. It just felt like another card. Like there was nothing to get really excited about except for the poster says Paris. Nothing else. Like you have B-roll of Paris in between fights. That's about it.
Maybe they gave out Eiffel Tower keychains.
Wow. Congratulations.
but you know, like you're making all the sense in the world here. Like, I just don't get why this had to happen now. It's like it's like we've seen Bellator in a rush to do certain things that just don't need to be done. Like, it's not in their best interest necessarily to do it. Like the New York thing was done right. Like the Hawaii events have been done right. When they really apply their full force in marketing and just planning, it comes across a lot better than a lot of these European shows have, and especially something that had this level of importance to it from a historical sense. It's just a wasted opportunity, and it's such a shame that they're wasting an opportunity. Yet again. Like, I mean, it would have been at least mildly more acceptable to, give us Tito Chael 2 or something, like names that at least will get someone to look. Czech Congo versus Tim Johnson just is not it. It's just not. And no matter what the results of that fight actually turned up to be, no, that's just not the path at all.
Yeah. And before, like, one other thing, like, we have fighters on this card that were, somewhat exciting fighters, guys that we can get excited about to watch. Namely, obviously, Michael Venom Page. They put him on the card. They put him further down the card. And fighting, again, another guy that not a lot of people know about in Ross Houston, right? Obviously, he took his first loss. He's now 8-1. But who is Ross Houston to the MMA world? Whereas a lot of people know Michael Venom Page, 18-1 now. A lot of people know him because he's been in marquee spots before. Why is Michael Venom Page still fighting unknown people at this point in his career? Somebody answer it. Make it, Drake, make it make sense.
I don't know if I can, dude. It's really, it's a weird thing. It's a very weird thing. Especially considering that nobody really seems interested in seeing this anymore, right? We've seen this, the Michael Venom Page project, right? Where, all right, you see that you got to build him up. All right. In the beginning, you're like, okay, yeah, you take it easy with the guy, slow, nice and slow. You're like, all right, well, I think he's probably ready now. He's won, 6 in a row? Pretty impressively. Keeps going. Then you get him in the tournament, and he actually faces somebody, Paul Daly. Doesn't quite deliver, doesn't turn out very well. He gets the win, nonetheless, whether he should have or not. Then he faces the best person that he possibly could face, and gets put on the highlight reel of all highlight reels with one of the most sensational knockouts that you will ever find. Just a beautiful finish from Douglas Lima, the champion. And then after that, all right, let's throw him back down to that list of guys that he was fighting on his way up. I will say I think some of them haven't been as bad as on the come up, of course, but obviously he went way back down the ladder in terms of level of competition, which I guess isn't surprising considering who he fought. But still, it just, once you see somebody get to that point, whether they should have or not, but in this case, he was winning, gets the win over Daly, even though lackluster, fights Lima, didn't get beaten 30 seconds. He was in there for at least to the second round, and then he got flatlined. But you don't go that far back down. It just is like, why would you want to see that? You're like, okay, he lasted. At least he lasted against these top guys. I don't know. It's kind of trying to squeeze the last life out of this lemon, or whatever you want to say, right? The last drips of the Michael Venom Page star power to sell the events, I suppose, because this does nothing. This does really nothing for him aside from, bolster his record, which even the performances aren't great. I didn't see this fight, but nobody seemed to enjoy it, right? I mean, he's not being all flashy and getting these highlight reels knockouts that we were used to seeing on the come up. So that even further points out why are we doing this? Like, unless it's admitting on Bellator's part that, all right, I think we see that he's hit his ceiling. Let's just keep doing this until he wants to stop, because we know he's not beating the Douglas Limas of the world. So maybe it's just, them admitting that, because I have no other explanation.
That sounds like a good enough explanation right there. I think they feel like they've seen his ceiling. So we've seen him against high level competition twice. First time ended up being a stinker that didn't even come close to the level of hype that fight had generated. And then, the next time he gets KO'd viciously. But still, like, there's no excuse at this point for someone with his level of experience to be fighting, a guy who was like a plumber last week that you just thrown into the cage. And Ross Houston clearly is not that. He's, he was an undefeated prospect going into that fight. So, no disrespect to him, but there is a point of no return when you start reaching a higher level of competition. Like he is at least good enough to beat a Paul Daly. So maybe let's put him in front of a Lorenz Larkin. How about, because, especially in France, where there is a huge following and a rich history of kickboxing, man, him versus Raymond Daniels sounds like all the fun in the world. There are a lot of good things you can do that don't necessarily scream, okay, we're thrusting you into the title shot right now, but also don't scream like, okay, Kramer fighting the 7-year-olds in his karate class in that episode of Steinfeld. Like, there are levels to this, and you can't go all the way down to the bottom of the ladder when you got so close to the top of it and expect us to accept it. It just doesn't make any sense. And quite honestly, if we want to see MVP at his best, you might have to challenge the man a little bit. You might have to put something in front of him that's going to excite him. I don't think we've seen that. I mean, we've seen him do a couple of spectacular moves, but I mean, is that really the best that we can hope for? And if so, maybe we should just pull the plug on this altogether.
I think we're at this point with MVP where Bellator wants to put him against lesser competition so he can go out there and make another highlight for the highlight reel, right? But MVP, I think personally, MVP is at the point where he believes he's better than these guys. He should not be in there. So he has to play more conservatively not to get caught and get clipped by one of these guys. He has to maintain that record now. But Bellator still wants him to go out there and be that same type of fighter that we saw him on the come up, like Drake was talking about. I think for him, he needs the higher level competition just so he can be like, hey, this is where I belong. I love the Lorenz Larkin idea, by the way. That's who he should be in there with against. If you go look at the Bellator lineup of welterweights, there's a lot of names out there they could be putting him against that have some name value. But Ross Houston isn't one of those guys. So his next opponent should be one of those guys. And if it's not a headlining or a co-main event, I don't know what are they doing with him. I don't understand what their plan is for him at this point. But hopefully we will get a clearer picture the next time they schedule him out. Now, back to this card in particular, this first history-making card in France. There were some good moments on it. I mean, Yves Landau landed this ridiculous flying knee for a knockout. It was a spectacular knockout, made the rounds on Twitter. Everybody was hitting the retweets and the likes and everything like that. So there were some good moments out of this card. But again, it comes back to Bellator doing weird things when you slap a 90-minute intermission after your prelims. After some of the prelims were really exciting. You saw some pretty slick submission. Like you saw a Japanese necktie. Like, when do you ever see that ever? Not really ever in MMA, right? So you get people ramped up for watching fights. When we watch strap in for a UFC card, if we're watching prelims, all the way to the main event, straight through. At worst, when you're watching a UFC production, they have to cut a post-fight interview short in between the prelims and the main card because they have to switch broadcasts, right? Bellator is like, nah, y'all go do whatever you want for 30 minutes, in this case, 90 minutes, and then come back for more fights. Dude, like if I wasn't so ingrained in MMA and if I was just a casual strapping in for a couple of fights, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go see what else I can do. If I come back, you're lucky to get me back. Like, I just don't understand why they can't schedule the fight cards all the way through. Somebody help make it make sense again.
It's one of those things that we can't make sense of. It's It's asinine. It's really asinine. And especially when you're talking about the sports coming back now. Now we have sports just on. Now we've got football, basketball just ended. There are countries that are having full stadiums playing whatever games they're playing. So sports are now not this like thing that we're just craving for, we're starved for. You know, when the UFC was bouncing from Tachi Palace to you know the yacht in international waters and whatever else that they were trying to attempt, like we're not starved for that content. So if you give me on a Friday or Saturday or whatever day of the week it is, you give me 90 minutes to do something else, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to do something else. And if I come back, I come back. If not, you know, don't hold your breath. You know, you're talking about the typical demographic of MMA fans is what males from like 18 to 34, something like that is the biggest block. Yeah, try to hold an 18 to 34-year-old male's attention and just say sit in this room for 90 minutes on a Saturday and come right back. Good luck. Like really good luck. Like this just doesn't make any sense. Like, you know, and I once had a conversation with Rich Chow about some of these sort of moves and like why does Bellator do some of this? And, you know, the only real answer I got was that they, you know, that we're not supposed to watch everything necessarily. They don't make everything for everybody to watch. And quite frankly, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me when you are trying to attract eyeballs to increase the value of your product. So, you know, and we've seen the UFC do it to an extent as well, as far as devaluing their own events. But this right here is just asinine. Like it goes beyond comprehension. Why would you do this if you actually want the audience to stick around and appreciate the show that you're trying to put on?
Drake.
So, quite frankly, it's pretty laughable and I dare say insulting to put intermissions as well as the main event that they chose for this card. Pretty laughable and pretty insulting, honestly, to the fans to think that they'd be excited for that and then to, you know, give them an intermission that long on a card of this caliber or lack thereof. As for explanations as to why this would happen, why they would do an intermission like that, the only thing I can equate it to, obviously, would be Ryzen and Ryzen doing their intermissions. And the reason that they have intermissions, and mind you, at like 4 a.m. in the morning Pacific time when I'm watching. So if I can power through that, I'll take this. I'll take this. But either way, the reason for those is usually because of TV related things or stuff with the network out of the MMA promotions control, even though it is also partly crowd stuff. They will do them to give the crowd a little bit of a break too for like 30 minutes so that you can go to the bathroom so you don't have to miss any action, which I think that's kind of nice, especially if you're there and you don't want to miss anything because they go very quickly when it's fight to fight to fight, you know, not really much pauses or breaks at Ryzen events. And, you know, I know a lot of Bellator's prelims, they usually are pretty quickly too, just going nonstop. So, yeah, but in this case, I don't know if there was a crowd at this Paris event, but if there wasn't, then it makes it even weirder. And I don't think they were probably competing with anybody on the channel that they were on and that kind of stuff. But typically, if the only thing I compare it to is Ryzen, their reasons for intermissions is because of, you know, TV stuff or, you know, letting the crowd have a break if there's a crowd and whatnot. So I don't know if the same excuse is there for Bellator, but if I'm going to make sense of it, maybe that's something they can fall back on. But I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, a lot of questions, a lot of things that we can really, you know, kind of shake our head at when it comes to Bellator and doing these things like these intermissions, the weird matchmaking, things like that. Let us know in the comments below, what did you think about this Bellator Paris card if you watched it? And did you stick around after the intermissions? You know, like Drake said, like, why am I going to come back after 90 minutes for this main event? Things like that. I don't know. Let us know below how you felt about it. Thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it.